was going to talk about liberals and what they believe and how that could be done through an anarchist society. So liberals typically want the government to provide things like healthcare, free housing, student loan forgiveness, universal basic income, protect the environment, ending inequalities, taxing the rich, and so on. Is it possible to provide for what I think they mostly want is taking care of the poor people in an anarchist society? Or would the weakest in our society, the poorest, fall victims to the saying, only the strong survive? If people aren't generous with wealth, how can we prevent chaos and robbery from those who have less than us? And do humans really just need to develop, like you were mentioning before with GoFundMe, um, charitable ideology that people just have to be charitable to those who need it, but not like allow them to continue doing nothing if they're capable of doing something.
Okay, so when you first started asking about the liberals and you're listing off all the things that they want to accomplish, I'm in agreement with all those things. I want people to have a safety net for their health. I want people to have a safety net to eat if they can't, and all these things you were listing, I'm in complete agreement with. I think these things should be accomplished. The last thing you said was tax the rich. So I stand against that. Taxation is theft. So we're not going to do that. But all those other things, what they're doing is they're saying, I want the government to do it. So why don't you, instead of having the government hold a gun to your head and tell you how that's going to happen, why don't you guys just organize together and fund it on your own? I mean, the money's coming out of your check no matter what, but at least now you get to know that it's not ending up in politicians' pockets, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I believe is really exciting about humanity right now, and in an answer to your question, is the fact that we have Bitcoin now. We have the blockchain technology, and I believe that the blockchain will eradicate poverty. Poverty cannot exist in a free market.
So my next question was about Republicans. Republicans believe in conserving our nation's values, such as freedom of speech, the right to bear arms, individualism, all people being created equal, and many other ideas that our founding fathers incorporated into this country. Many voted for Donald Trump because they saw him as an independent, uncontrolled, classic American that wanted to free our nation from the elite. What message do you have for self identifying Republicans slash conservatives who see the Republican Party as the only hope to keep our nation free and prosperous?
Well, again, I'll say kind of the same thing to the Republicans I said to the Democrats. If you're concerned about the freedom of speech, if you're concerned about your freedoms, you are ultimately responsible for your freedoms. This is how nature has set it up. You are in charge of your freedom. So if you want the freedom of speech, are you better off having a small portion of psychopaths holding a gun to your head telling you that they're protecting your freedom of speech? Or are you better off exercising your freedom of speech without a gun being held to your head? What actually protects your rights? You know what protects your rights is not having people hold a gun to your head and steal your labor.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you just have to realize everything that you're fighting for is actually fighting against you, against your basic
Right.
rights. So,
Well, and this is why I believe so many people are miserable. Again, it's because what they want, I believe they want these things. They truly want these things, but their actions are not in harmony. Their actions are not producing the results that they say they're after, but they're not changing their actions. And when you get stuck in these kind of cycles as a person, you become miserable. And this is why there's so many, the farther to the extremes on both the right and the left that you go, the more miserable people get.
yeah, I've also noticed that people they want to delegate these things to somebody else. They kind of don't want to take responsibility, like you mentioned. It's up to you,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't want it to be up to them. They want it to be up to somebody else, so they could do like God knows what, maybe just watch TV or something. But it's ultimately about self accountability, taking responsibility for what you believe.
Right. The cost of freedom is personal responsibility. That is the cost. And our entire system is set up on this concept of deferred responsibility. People don't know where their retirement's going. They don't know what their 401k is doing. They have no idea. The money just comes out of their check and they defer the responsibility of their personal retirement onto somebody else without knowing what's going on. People don't take care of their own health. They just go to the doctor. They don't ask any questions and they take whatever pills the doctors give them, right? The doctor never addresses lifestyle. to just address his symptoms so he can sell you pills. A legalized drug dealer. People don't want to protect their own neighborhoods. They defer that responsibility off to the police. They don't get involved anymore to help each other out. So if you're going to defer your responsibilities, you're not free. So what people should do, the first step, all these people should do is say, if I want to claim I'm free, then I'm going to behave in that way. I'm going to take responsibility for myself. If you are going to continue to defer your responsibilities, then you could do yourself a favor by saying, I'm not concerned with freedom. I want to be owned. And that will create a little bit extra inner peace for you for a little bit.
So both Democrats and Republicans see the voting system where we could choose our senators, mayors, presidents, etc., as a way to be represented in the system which we currently live under. What message do you have to people who vote in order to have the person who they feel best represents their values in charge of the system? Is there a system of government? Is the system of government we know today basically lying to everybody that they're doing exactly that?
Right. Everything the government tells us is a lie. They do the opposite of what they say they're doing for us. So when they're saying we get to pick our representatives, very few people I feel like actually believe the elections are even legitimately counted. But even if they are legitimately counted, we don't really have we're told who we get to vote for. So we're not, so again, we don't have a choice. And again, what's the point of choosing who holds a gun to your head versus being told who holds a gun to your head? It's the illusion of choice. People feel like they're in control when they think they're the ones making the decisions, but we're not. We're not. And it's self-evident. Look around at what's going on in the world today. It's awful. So much war and death and poverty and destruction. It's disgusting. This is not what humans are supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. So what message do you have for the common voter? Is the solution the same as when they tell you put a mask on? Is the solution just ignore them and don't do it? Like nonviolent disobedience or something like that?
That's what I believe. I believe that not voting is a vote. Right? Not voting is a vote. Whether I vote or not, there's, the problem's not, the root of the problem isn't which person, which pedophile, team red or team blue is holding office. The problem is that the office is there at all. Right. And when you vote, what you're voting for is you're essentially voting to have a small group of psychopaths use the police to bring force against people to make them comply with you. And in voting, it's kind of like it's like 7 steps removed, but it's still on the path to violence, because that's what you're saying. I'm voting for violence to be brought against these people if they don't comply with the way I want to live. And at the root, that's against the laws of human interaction.
So I was going to go into the social contract theory. The social contract theory argues that individuals have consented, either explicitly or tactically, to surrender some of their freedoms and to submit to the authority bracket of the ruler or to the decision of the majority bracket in exchange for protection of their remaining rights or maintenance of the social order. This is taught in schools as the reason for our government and tries to justify it by telling us that we get our rights protected by the authority. How can you debunk this? I know you already did, but it's good to point out that they do teach this in high schools.
Yeah, here's the funny thing about a lot of these types of contracts is, to a degree, it's true, because everybody through what word did he use there? Tactical. So tactically, we are all consenting to the social contract that we're going to give the ruler the fruit of our labor. It's just, what people don't understand is it's a bunk contract. It's fraudulent. And, in a legal sense, the only thing required to breach a fraudulent contract is you just need to stop behaving in accordance with it. So as soon as you say, I'm not going to behave in accordance with it, you're shifting that part that says, or that part that said tactically, you're saying, okay, now I'm not. So now I'm not entering into this contract. I haven't consented. Even the contract itself said you need to consent. Right at the beginning, it says something about we consent one way or the other, tactically or the other.
Yeah, pretty much just saying that since you haven't fought against it, it's still in play. Since you haven't realized what's going on, it still applies to you. Basically. Can you
Sure.
define anarchism? Yeah, like compared to what other people might think it is.
Okay. Well, like everybody, I get it. I grew up in America in the '90s when I was a teenager, and so anarchy was always like death and destruction. It was punk rock. It was chaos. It was
Mm-hmm.
violence, and it's not what you want. Um, but there's a few different ways to define anarchy. From a spiritual perspective, I believe anarchy is the only thing that exists because anarchy is the understanding of self ownership. And every human, every animal, every insect, every plant, its life force has control over its own body. That's just the way it is. Even if somebody's holding a gun to your head, you still have to comply with what they're saying, right? So they're still not forcing you; they're just coercing you. So from
Mm-hmm.
a spiritual perspective, that's what anarchy is to me. And then from more of like a political spectrum, the etymology of the word "and" meaning without, archy meaning rulers. So instead of a lot of people misunderstand it; they think it means no rules. But anarchy doesn't mean no rules; it just means no rulers, right? And
Mm-hmm.
under anarchy is the only way a person can be free. And the way I decide if I'm free, the way I recognize if I'm a free person, that's if I have 100% discretionary authority over the proceeds of my labor. If anybody's taking my labor from me, I'm not free. And it doesn't matter if it's half a percent, quarter a percent. If it's a gun to my head to steal it from me, I'm not free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that definition.